4-5 winters, the bear came back, always to the same place, always at the same time. He was just a cub when Nora rescued him from a frozen river, nursed him through frostbite, and set him free. He never forgot. Each year, he returned to her cabin's edge. Not close, just visible. A quiet presence. A promise. But this year was different. The bear emerged from the trees limping, blood matting the fur along his shoulder. And around his neck was a leather collar, strapped tight. Not store-bought. Hand-stitched. Etched with symbols she couldn't understand, and a tag that read only one word. Returned. That night, Nora followed the trail he left behind. And what she found deep in the forest, beneath snow and silence, would unravel a secret that had been buried for years. Because the bear hadn't just returned with a wound. He'd brought the truth. The first time Nora saw the bear, he was no bigger than a golden retriever, soaked, shivering, and half drowned in the frigid creek that ran behind her cabin. It was her second winter alone in the mountains, and she wasn't looking for company. But something about the cub's eyes made her stop. They were wide. Frightened. Begging, not with noise, but with stillness. Nora had seen that look before. In the mirror. The night her brother disappeared. She waded into the freezing water without a second thought, wrapped the cub in her flannel jacket, and brought him inside. She fed him raw eggs and honey, stitched a wound on his paw, and tucked him near the fireplace on a pile of old blankets. He didn't growl. He didn't bite. He simply watched her, blinking slowly, like he understood. She didn't name him. That would have made it harder to let go. And after 2 weeks, when the cub was strong enough to stand, he walked out the door and didn't look back. Nora thought that was it. A brief moment. A kindness paid. A life saved. But exactly 1 year later, on the first snow of December, she looked out her window, and there he was. Larger. Wilder. Stronger. Standing at the edge of the woods. Watching. He came every year after that. He never came too close. Never begged. Never broke a single thing. He would just appear, sit for a while, sometimes for an hour, sometimes for a night, and then vanish again. She started leaving scraps out for him. Then fresh fish. Once, she even played a record on the porch, and he sat listening, eyes half closed. It was an unspoken bond. A ritual. A promise. But this winter, something was wrong. The bear stumbled from the trees, blood trailing behind him. A deep scar ran across his side, fresh, red, angry. And around his neck. A collar. Leather. Thick. Human-made. Tight enough to chafe. Attached to it was a strange metal tag. Etched into the silver was a single word. Returned. Nora's hands trembled. Who had taken him? Where had he gone? And why bring him back? She stepped off the porch, but the bear backed away growling, not at her, but at the collar. He didn't want help. Not yet. So she did what she always did. She sat down, silent, cross-legged in the snow. And waited. By morning, the bear was gone, but the blood trail remained. Nora stood in the frostbitten clearing, the silver tag heavy in her hand. She hadn't slept. The bear had let her close enough to remove the collar, though he winced as she cut it loose. The leather was cracked and strange, smelling not just of animals, but of smoke, pine tar, and metal. And the tag. It was more than a nameplate. It was handmade. Etched not with factory precision, but with human fingers. The word returned looked burned in, each letter seared with intention. And beneath the tag's plate, pressed between the leather folds, she found something else. A scrap of fabric. Dark green. Tattered. With faint embroidery. It looked old. But it wasn't random. It looked like part of a uniform. And it bore the initials, J.W. Nora staggered back inside, heart pounding. She hadn't seen those initials in years. J.W., Jonah Whitlock. Her brother. Presumed dead over a decade ago. Memories surged like floodwater, her brother laughing by the stream, sketching animals in his worn leather notebook, dreaming of being a park ranger. He had gone missing in these very woods at age 19. People said he fell. Got lost. Maybe mauled. But Nora had always believed otherwise. That something, or someone, had silenced him. And now, a bear she once rescued had come back, wounded and wearing her dead brother's collar. It didn't make sense. Unless Jonah wasn't dead. Unless the bear had been with him. And if the bear had returned now, bleeding, scarred, sent back like a message, then something had gone wrong. Very wrong. Nora stuffed supplies into her backpack. Water, dried meat, flares, and the only photo she had of Jonah. Then she slung the old hunting rifle over her shoulder. The bear hadn't just come back with an injury. He'd come back with a secret. And she was going to follow him into the forest to find it. The northern woods were silent under snow, thick, heavy, unnatural. Nora followed the blood trail where the bear had limped the night before. Each step deeper into the forest brought more than just cold, it brought memory. She hadn't walked this far since the search parties gave up on Jonah 10 years ago. But the trail was clear. Tufts of dark fur. Heavy paw prints. Specks of dried blood. And always, just ahead, that feeling. That she was being watched. She walked for hours. The wind bit through her gloves. Branches creaked overhead like whispering ghosts. Then, a clearing. A wide, flat circle in the snow, surrounded by fallen trees arranged almost like a barrier. At the center, paw prints spun in frantic circles. A struggle. A stain of blood. And beside it, a broken trap. Not a hunter's trap. Something heavier. Built with steel. Rigged with chains and thick hooks, like a snare for something big. Something specific. A bear. Nora knelt beside the trap. There were markings on it, symbols carved into the iron base. Not letters. More like glyphs or runes. Old. She took photos. Then she saw it, half buried in the snow nearby. A notebook, the leather cracked, frozen nearly solid. She pried it open with shaking hands. Inside, sketches. Notes. Drawings of birds, paw prints, herbal diagrams. And a name on the inside cover, Jonah Whitlock. He had been here. Alive. Documenting. Studying. Surviving. The last entry was dated 2 weeks ago. The bear visits every second day now. Trust is growing. He watches over the clearing like a sentinel. There's something beneath the pine roots. I've seen men come at night. They leave markings. Something is happening here that doesn't belong. I'm going to follow them tomorrow. If I don't come back, and the bear returns alone, whoever finds this, tell my sister I tried. Nora's breath caught. The bear hadn't just returned with a collar. He'd returned with a warning. Something in these woods was darker than she ever imagined. And she wasn't alone. Behind her, a branch cracked. She turned, rifle raised. Eyes stared back from the trees. For one breathless second, nothing moved. Then, a whisper. Not from wind, but from voices. Low. Human. Nearby. Nora crouched behind a snow-covered stump, heart pounding. Through the gaps in the trees, she saw 3 figures, dressed in worn green gear, their faces hidden by scarves and hoods. They weren't hikers. Or hunters. They moved like they knew the woods too well. One of them knelt by the broken trap. He examined the twisted metal, swore under his breath, and said something she couldn't quite hear. But she caught one word. Escape. Another replied sharply, holding up a small device. Still tracking it. Won't get far. Tracking? They were looking for the bear. She waited until they moved deeper into the trees, then slipped away in the opposite direction, toward a ridge her brother had sketched in his journal. It overlooked a hidden valley, and Jonah had labeled it Sanctuary. If he had gone there, maybe, just maybe. She reached the ridge as the sun began to fall. And what she saw took her breath away. In the hollow of the valley stood a stone structure, half-buried, ancient, grown over with vines and pine roots. Not a cabin. Not a ruin. A temple, almost. And lying just outside it, breathing heavily, curled in pain, was the bear. Nora scrambled down the slope. He growled once, softly, recognizing her. She approached slowly. His fur was matted with blood. The wound had reopened. She saw new scratches, fresh ones. Not from wolves. From knives. She dropped to her knees and began working, cleaning, pressing a dressing against the wound with cloth from her pack. "I'm here," she whispered. "You found me. I found you. Just hold on." The bear didn't fight her. He just blinked, slow, trusting. And then, he lifted one massive paw, and pushed a bundle toward her, wrapped in thick canvas, hidden beneath his body. She opened it. Inside, Jonah's ranger badge, and a camera. Cracked, but intact. And a notebook. Not Jonah's. Theirs. She flipped through it. Plans. Coordinates. Photos of ancient carvings on the temple wall. Diagrams of the bear. Diagrams of others. A word kept appearing again and again. Extraction. Guardians. Harvest. That's when she understood. They weren't tracking the bear to kill it. They were tracking it because they knew something ancient lived in its blood. A connection to something prehistoric. Sacred. Maybe even supernatural. And Jonah had found the secret. They silenced him for it. But the bear got away. And came back. To tell her. The sun vanished behind the trees. Long shadows stretched across the temple clearing. The forest fell into a hush, thick with cold and dread. The bear lay beside Nora, breathing shallowly. He had brought her here. To the place her brother died. To the place her brother had protected. And now, it was her turn. She checked the camera. Miraculously, the SD card still worked. The screen flickered weakly to life. Dozens of photos, grainy but clear, shots of carvings, of the bear near the temple, of Jonah standing beside it, smiling faintly. The last photo was different. A group of men, faces hidden, surrounding Jonah. One held a needle. Another, a gun. And in the background, the bear roaring mid-charge. Nora blinked away tears. They tried to harvest something from the bear. From all the guardians like him. Ancient creatures tied to the land. To legend. To something beyond science. And Jonah had paid the price. A branch snapped behind her. She stood quickly, clutching the camera. 3 of the men stepped into the clearing, cold eyes locking on hers. "Didn't expect you to find this place," one said. "Too bad it ends here." Another raised a weapon. Then, a roar. The bear, bloodied, rose behind her like a storm. He staggered forward, slow, deliberate, immense. No longer afraid. Not hiding. Not fleeing. Protecting. They fired. Once. Twice. The bear didn't stop. He lunged. It was over in seconds. 2 of the men fled. 1 didn't. But the bear collapsed soon after, chest heaving, fur stained with both his blood and theirs. Nora dropped beside him, sobbing. "No, no, you don't have to." The bear looked at her, just once. And she felt it again, what she had felt years ago, pulling him from the river. Something more than animal. Something human. He died with his eyes open. Staring at the temple. At the trees. At the place he had sworn to protect. Epilogue, 1 year later. Nora stood in the same clearing. A stone cairn marked the bear's resting place, beneath the roots of a pine that had grown taller than ever. The temple was now cordoned and protected under a new environmental act, named after Jonah Whitlock. Nora had shared everything, the notes, the photos, the trap, the truth. The world watched in awe as the story unraveled. Not everyone believed it. But she didn't care. She knew what she saw. And every year since, on the first snow of December, a cub emerged from the woods. Golden-furred. Quiet. Watchful. And just like before, it sat at the edge of the trees. Waiting.